Morning, it is Monday the 1st of November. Time to have breakfast at work. Kinda hungry. Morning, time for breakfast.
Keer leuk om gewoon achter de podium te staan terwijl de musical bezig is en dan kijken hoe ze dat allemaal doen. En wat dat zei hij nog, dat ik zei, het is gewoon perfect klinkt, maar ze zei, ja weet je, je zit natuurlijk op het podium proberen, maar achter de schermen.
Right, what's up? I've arrived in Leiden, which is a city in the west of the Netherlands, just south of Amsterdam, about half an hour. And in between Amsterdam and The Hague. The Hague is the third city of the Netherlands. Rotterdam is the second, which is farther south of The Hague. So The Hague is another half hour, and Leiden is exactly in between. It's a very historical city in the Netherlands. A famous city, although it's often overlooked by tourists. But it has a lot to offer. It's very old, very beautiful. Although you don't directly see that from the station, the center is quite nice. As you can see, we have a pretty good infrastructure. This train is brand new, and it's kind of expensive to travel here, but it goes fast and you get everywhere. Walking to the center, we see an old mill over there, and different styles of architecture, and it's actually pretty ugly. It's a mix of everything, and Dutch people are not known to have good taste, like at all. So what you see sometimes is the old architecture, which is real nice, but then you see a mixture of more recent architecture and so-called modern architecture, which is over there, and I don't like it. I'm trying not to film people because they don't like it, and they'll definitely come up to your face, so try to just pan around them. In our case, this is Leiden. The old center is actually nice. Now where things start to get nicer is the old architecture of this country. From the Middle Ages. What we see here is a building from, if we look at the signature, on top it says M, standing for mil, which is 1000, D is 500, C is from cento, which is 100, and 15, I believe. These are the canals, and that's, you know, the main site in the Netherlands, the canals and the buildings around them. You'll see them in every city. Basically every city in this whole country is from the Middle Ages, except for a few modern cities in the newer provinces, let's say, but it's a very historical country. All these buildings are at least centuries old, 2, 3, even 4 centuries sometimes. Like this big building, you can imagine 400 years ago that was quite difficult to construct, but they were absolute geniuses when it came to architecture and art, and nowadays that's kind of gone, a long lost art. But the historical parts are still standing, which is quite wonderful, and it's well maintained. That's what I appreciate about this country. It's maintained in the same style, it's not demolished or anything like that. Now, because this country has a lot of canals, it also has a lot of bridges, and these come in all shapes and forms. Some can be drawn up for a boat, let's say, the one over there, which is an ophaalbrug, which means that it can be pulled up for a ship to pass. Some cannot, like this one. Probably this one cannot be lifted. This one's quite modern. But some can definitely be centuries old as well, which are the most incredible bridges. You have many of these in Amsterdam. And these are just a lot newer right here. Because obviously in the Middle Ages they first used to have wooden bridges, then went to construct in steel, let's say, and they completely over-engineered bridges. And then some were replaced, like this one. This one is not even 30 years old, I suppose. 40 perhaps. Most buildings are made of bricks, and bricks are obviously made of clay, and that's because we have so much water that when you scrape the bottom of a canal or any river, you immediately get clay. In some areas of the Netherlands, some places it's just mud, but I'm from an area with clay, and clay is a different type of mud. You cannot just use mud to make bricks. It has to be clay, which is a more solid type of mud, let's say, in easy terms. Clay is from the area where I was born. I'm from the city of Tiel, which is written T-I-E-L. Very small town, but it's known for its clay grounds. And I'll tell you an interesting story about these clay grounds. My father, for over 20 years, has worked for a brick factory as an engineer, and these brick factories were always made next to the rivers because, well, you pull clay from the river, you might as well put it directly into an oven, which are huge ovens where they make bricks for the whole country since many centuries. And that's basically where you have the big ovens and whatever, just in certain parts of the country, and coincidentally where I'm from. Now, what they say about people who come from this area is they say they are pulled from the clay. Uit de klei getrokken. That's how you say it. So I'm, for example, pulled out of the clay because I'm from the clay area of the country by some big rivers. There's countless rivers, some have clay, and when there's clay, there's brick factories. Either way, interesting story. My father doesn't work there anymore, but he did for a very long time. It has a lot of interesting stories. Many brick factories are now abandoned because I believe most bricks are coming from abroad. I'm not quite sure. But probably not domestic anymore, a lot of bricks. You know, I suppose the Laken Hall, which is this building that I just showed you, is actually used for textile. Because I see that there's here a statue, or let's say representation of a mill, and next to it we see textile. And I suppose this was actually a building where textile was traded. I suppose they used the mill for its production and then wove the textile somewhere and then it was either traded here or I don't know exactly, but I'm sure this building has a really interesting history. And because everything is straight from the Middle Ages, it is just left outside here because, well, you cannot put everything in a museum if it's just your whole city from a certain period, you know? You just leave it like this, and it's actually accessible to the public, and this is easily 400 years old. What we see is big tombstones here. I don't know why these people are buried here, but people died all the time in the Middle Ages of whatever, and we had typhoid, cholera, and the wealthier people, they used burial grounds just anywhere they could afford it, in places where there was visibility, let's say, and the poor people were obviously not, they couldn't afford such a designated spot, they were just, I don't know, burnt or whatever. That was a very tough life in the Middle Ages, but some people were rich and they could afford all of these symbols here. It's just extremely old, hundreds of years. It says Peter Marcus, who was a pensioner and the council, let's say. This took a lot of money to make. Here's a mayor, so influential people were buried here, next to a very visible place in the center.